Hi fellow artists, my name is Lauren. I'm the artist behind Potato Art Studios, and in this video I'll show you how I colored this hummingbird. So if you're interested, just keep watching. For my base sketches, I use the grid method to transfer my reference image that you can see in the upper left corner onto my piece of paper. I'm not going to go over that method here. If you'd like to learn about the grid method, I'll leave a link to it in the description box below, so you can pause this video, check out that tutorial, and then come back. So in my first layer of color, or what I usually call layer 1, I'm not really going into a lot of detail. You'll see me darken the edges of the neck feathers of the hummingbird a little bit, but for the most part I'm just trying to cover the entire surface area of the hummingbird with the approximate color that I want it to be. So I'm using some reds, some yellows, and I won't be going into detail of the exact color I use for each area, because what you have on hand will probably be different from what I use. So this tutorial is just basically to give you an idea of the techniques and how I approach drawing different subjects, and then you can adapt it into your own drawing methods. But I will have a complete list of the brands and materials in the description box below if you're interested in checking those out. For transparency, all of the links that I'll provide are Amazon affiliate links. So if you choose to shop with one of the links below, a small percentage of your purchase will be received by me as a commission. If you don't feel comfortable using an affiliate link, you can just Google the item description yourself and then find the materials. I'm done laying out the color on the head, and now I'm approaching the color on the body, and the body is really roughly filled in. I have the wing as a dark blue, the rest of the bird's body as a brown and a green, and you can see it's kind of like a paint by numbers. It's not very detailed at this stage yet. So my first layer of color is usually the quickest because I'm not really worried about a specific color going in a specific place. All I'm worried about is area coverage. And you'll see me erase an area first before going over it in color, and that's because when I'm using lighter colored pencils like a white or a yellow, it's difficult to completely cover up my base pencil sketch. So I'll usually either use a kneaded rubber eraser or just a regular plastic eraser and lighten up the sketch marks that I've made, and also make sure I erase that grid that I used to plot the drawing before I go over it with color. I have made the mistake before of thinking my color pencils will completely cover it. So in a little bit, I'll be using an odorless mineral spirit to blend out the first layer of colored pencil in my drawing, and I'll leave a great tutorial by Lacry in the description box below that will explain a lot of great tips in more detail. So now that I have the first layer colored in, I'm going to go over the entire hummingbird with Gamsol, which is an odorless mineral spirit, and the Gamsol will basically work to break up the binder in the color pencil so that it gives the entire drawing a much softer look. So for the larger parts of the bird, I used a Princeton Select Filbert No. 6 brush, and for the very tiny details on the bird's eye and neck feathers, I used a Creative Mark small detail brush, and I'll have these two items also linked down in the description. But you don't have to use the exact brushes I use. You can experiment with whatever brushes you have on hand, and if you decide that you like or don't like how soft or firm your brush is, you can always try a different brush. My Gamsol has dried. You'll see that my drawing has gotten a little bit lighter, and that's just an effect of using Gamsol. And I am going to go in with the second layer of color. And in layer 2 of color, I'm usually trying to create color variations. So you'll see in the red areas on the hummingbird's face, I'm using either a darker red or a slightly lighter red or an orange color. And that's to start building up the details. So in every area that I colored previously in layer 1, I'm going to go over that area with a color that's similar, either lighter, darker, or slightly different hue. And so you'll see in layer 2 that I'm applying a little bit more pressure than in layer 1. So now I'm moving on to the body of the hummingbird. Build up texture, or try to focus on building up texture. And comparing the time that I spent on the head to the rest of the body, I'm definitely spending a lot more time on the head and face on the hummingbird because I want that area to be the main focus of my drawing. So as I'm filling in some detail on the rest of the body of the hummingbird, add groups of parallel or slightly curved lines together on the back of the bird, and that's basically to try and give the illusion of feathers. And by doing those marks, those parallel marks, I'm not drawing the feather, but I'm trying to draw the cast shadow of the feather on top that's cast on the feathers below it. So you'll notice I'm not trying to outline every individual feather. I'm trying to build up volume by creating the illusion of layers of feathers of the bird, which in the end will turn into a texture that I think looks quite realistic. So I applied that technique with the green colored pencil, blue colored pencil, and with the white colored pencil, I did that for the very top layers of feathers. Now you'll see me go over the entire bird again with Gamsol, and typically I use between 3 to 5 layers of colored pencil and 1 to 2 layers of Gamsol. And Gamsol isn't a requirement for drawing, but I do like the effect of it, and I think it removes that paper gritty texture that you usually see when your pencil can't get into every nook and cranny of the surface of the paper. So again, because the Gamsol breaks down the colored pencil, it kind of makes sure that the pigments go deep into the paper, so you get a much smoother effect. So after I've made sure that my second layer of Gamsol is dried, I'm going into the face of the bird with very, very sharp pencils. If you don't have an electric pencil sharpener, I would highly recommend getting one, because when you're working with details during the final stages of your drawing, it'll definitely save you some time. So for the tiny neck feathers of the hummingbird, I treat it like a Ruffles laid potato chips. So if you've ever had Ruffles potato chips, it has ridges, so there's high points and low points of the feathers, just like your potato chip. So the high points is where the light reflects most, and that those areas will be lighter, and the valleys or the ridges of the feathers is darker, so that's where I add a darker colored pencil. To each feather, I don't necessarily need to color the highlights and shadows. I can do either or because I already have my base color laid out. So in many of these feathers, I'm going in with just a darker colored pencil than the color already on the bird. And so I'm just creating the ridges of the feathers. Here I'm trying to describe the top feathers. So since I already had my base color laid out, I just need to outline the highlights of the head feathers with white, and that automatically makes it look like feathers. We're adding a little bit more color variation with some pinks and browns here. And moving on into the body, I try to use similar colors throughout my entire drawing. So you'll see that the colors I used on the head, the top of the head, I continue onto the body itself. And again, you'll see me make those groupings of 3 or 4 parallel lines or slightly curved parallel lines to build up that feather texture that we talked about earlier. Now for the detail of the body, I'm not going to be as descriptive in Hummingbird's wing feathers as I was on the chest feathers, again because I don't want the main focus to be on the body of the hummingbird. I want it to be on the head. So I'm just generally describing the outline of the major feathers, and that's most of the work that's going to go in there. So we're adding a little bit more dimension to the head, with going back in with a slightly darker color to describe the feathers and a white to make the highlights really pop. And we're adding the shadows of the feathers on the neck of the hummingbird with black. So in order for my head to be the focus of my drawing, a good way is to always have the highest amount of contrast be in the spot you want your viewer's attention to go to. So on the head, I want to make sure I have dark colors and light colors. So going in with white and black, which are basically the lightest and darkest values that I have on my drawing, your attention will automatically be drawn to the head of the hummingbird. And sorry I changed the camera angle again. I was playing with different tripod arrangements, so I didn't want my hand to block what you're seeing as much. But it did warp the perspective of the video a little bit. And I changed the tripod angle again, so now you get a better view, but you also get a bit of my head blocking the way a little bit. At this stage, we're doing just the finishing touches. I like to go in at the end with my Derwent drawing pencil in Chinese white, which is the pencil you see here with a really thick white core and the reddish brown paint on the outside. And this is a really soft pencil, and so it can deposit white in a very opaque way onto almost anything. And now I'm just putting on a couple more details on the body, but I'm going over the rest of the body fairly quickly. So we're approaching the end of the drawing, and I'd like to thank you for watching. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. Again, all the materials I used will be listed in the description box. And if there's animal that you'd like to see me draw next, feel free to comment that too. I would love to hear from you. So stay tuned. Next week I'll be going over how I draw a cat in a box. So if you'd like to see that, definitely subscribe and hit the bell icon so you'll be notified when I upload my next video. And thank you for watching.